Okay, folks, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome. Okay, ready, folks? They're out of control. Well, good afternoon and welcome. For those of you that I have not met, my name is Joe Barker. I'm a member of Sunnyhill and also a member of our pastoral care team. This workshop, which we hope is the first of several over the next year or so, was in the discussion of the pastoral care team because so many members were raising questions not just about the services and the resources they needed, but also many people were becoming caregivers, whether they lived with a person or they knew someone. And so in hearing that, also my own personal experience of caregiving, I felt that one of the best things we could do as a team would be to gather together for a workshop and bring together agencies and organizations that really specialize in what I consider quality older adult services. We have with us today, and they'll be presenting, we have Jennifer Belden-England from the United Way of Southwest Pennsylvania. We have Colin Adair Morgan, attorney and I believe elder legal specialist. Sylvia McCafferty, and Sylvia is with the Allegheny County Department of Human Services, Aging. Sylvia and I worked together at Aging, and Sylvia is over the Caregiver program through Aging, and also has information about other resources, including the Senior Line, which is an incredible resource. And then we also have Hayley Maher from the Jewish Community Center, South Hills, their Age Well program. So we've got 4 agencies that really bring to the table resources that we hope you will find beneficial. Each of the families here today should have received a portfolio of information, and we'll be looking at a few of those documents. They ended up being, that portfolio went from 2 or 3 documents to over a dozen. So in order to better analyze those, we're going to hold a Zoom gathering in 2 weeks. We'll send you the link, and it'll give you a chance to look at the resources, to think about what you heard today, and then we can discuss the resources and get feedback about the workshop. For those of you that aren't aware of the sanctuary, of course, it's important to know there are 2 exits on each side of the sanctuary in case they are needed. The restrooms are through the back door, and there are refreshments and water back there as you need. Feel free to get up and get those. My interest in today's topic, besides working for the Area Agency on Aging, started when my spouse and I, Richard, were in our 50s. And we were part of the generation that lived through the AIDS pandemic and lost dozens of friends. In that process, it shocked us that many of these people, who we considered to be bright, in many cases professionals, had no plans at all. They were not seeing a medical care provider. They did not have legal documents. Their family, their friends knew nothing about what information was needed to really help them in the future. And at my age, when I say future, I mean tomorrow. So we went through that experience, and that's why we ended up getting, among other things, a will, a living will, a do not resuscitate, a collection of inventory of our resources. We really sat down and we spent time thinking about what someone needs to know, whether Richard needs to know about our household or friends and family, our attorney and our financial advisor needed to know. The second thing that brought me to today's workshop is the experience with my own father. My father was an extraordinary man. He raised 7 children, and he was very fortunate that he ended up with 14 caregivers, 7 children and their spouses. And on any given day, I would do the grocery shopping, someone would be there cleaning, my brother would be working on the plumbing and the heating, and my other brother would be cutting the lawn and cleaning the roof. My father's response to all that was, "I don't know why older people can't stay in their homes. This is very easy." My one brother almost stepped on his oxygen tube. Richard and I realized that that scenario was not only not common, but in our case, it was not realistic. We wanted to determine our own future plans, and so we put them in writing and asked close family members and a friend if they were willing, one, to read these documents, and two, to agree to help us when we needed them to do so. And we made that a very formal request and asked them to look at our wills, our end-of-life plans, which we attached to our will, what we wanted to happen when we died, being very practical and realistic. We told them everything, where our banks were, what doctors we used, what we wanted done with our personal resources, how we wanted money to go to organizations and charities, and where we wanted to live in the long term. What happened that also led me to this today is my spouse has Parkinson's and short-term dementia. So again, when he was of a clear mind, we sat and talked about where we wanted to live long term. We knew we couldn't stay in a house or an apartment. So we did some investigation, and we decided several years ago that we would live in a long-term senior care community where we could live independently and all the way through to hospice without moving to another community. And that was fairly controversial in my family and his. They found it to be somewhat negative. Richard and I thought it was proactive and smart. And we are in a community now, and it was the right choice for us. And I'm not saying it's the right choice for others, but it certainly ended up being the right choice for us. Each family today has that portfolio, and I want to review 3 items in that portfolio with you, just so you're aware of what, it's these 3 examples. The first, each one of you in each household should have the book, In Case of Emergency, the blue book. I like the subtitle, An Essential Life Organizer. I guess I have to say I was shocked by how this educated me about what to document, how to organize it, things that I didn't give a thought to that someone else could need of me for my care as I age. I would definitely ask you to take some time over the next week or 2 to look at this document. She did this document, the writer. She was experiencing significant medical issues, and her children knew very little about her life, her information, her resources. And so she sat down and she created this book for herself, published it. We found it several years ago, and it has enlightened us. And we review it every several months to update our aging checklist based upon what's in here. She covers everything from personal information, financial, medical, legal, auto, personal property, passwords, personal requests that she had of her children, and in case of emergency cards at the back that she recommends you put in your purse, your wallet, you put in your car, you have it with you. And that really helps in the case of any kind of an emergency. But to me, the book is really for any age person that wants to keep track of the vital information in their life. So we really hope you find this worthwhile and helps you in organizing going forward. I'm a Virgo, so I always thought I was very well organized till I read this book. I'm still a Virgo. The second document I'd like you to look at, and don't worry if you can't find it, but Richard and I, several years ago, created a document called a medical emergency information document, or some people call it an ICE, in case of emergency. And don't worry, you don't have to review it. I just want you to know it's in there. We've used this document 3 times in the past year. Twice because an ambulance had to come to our house, and we just had this document and we handed it to them, and they took it with us. And it documented medications, allergies, our primary care physician, family members that needed contact. It documented, and attached to it was our living will and our do not resuscitate document, and we keep it in a color folder on the back of our front door. And basically, we inform EMS and the community we live in, and my brother and Richard's brother, we have this document. We also have it in our car, so that when we go somewhere, and truly it has been unbelievably critical that when an ambulance or when we go to a doctor, we can hand this document over with all these questions and information that really makes a huge difference. In fact, the emergency room doctor told me it answered so many questions that we typically cannot get out of the patient, the family cannot remember, and we are searching for information about the patient in the emergency room. Everything from blood type to allergies to dietary restrictions to contact a religious organization if you want to. So give some thought, and we'll talk about this at the Zoom gathering, but truly if you came to my home and you closed the door, there is a container with an ICE packet, and one is for me and one is for Richard. And it has really eased our mind about any kind of emergency that could surface in our homes, and I found it to be a very smart thing. The last thing I want to talk about before I turn the stage over to really the experts is once we read this book, and I gave an example in the packet, it's called a Smart Aging Information Checklist. On a regular basis, when I review this, I have a password-protected document, which it doesn't need to be on a computer. You can fill out the book, and we review it and update it on a regular basis. And it has everything that anyone would need to know about us to make decisions with us and for us based upon our needs and desires. Our checklist started off to be 1 page, and it's now 3, because it just ended up, as things got more complicated in life, we wanted our family and our friends and our attorneys and our financial people, if we had them, to know what was going on in our life. So quite honestly, I wanted to be a part of this workshop for a very selfish reason. I felt like I had spent the past 10 to 15 years learning about a system that, for some reason in this country, aging seems to be a big surprise. You know, you're like, oh, you know, and, you know, we plan, we get a mortgage and get a house, we buy cars, we do all these things, and then all of a sudden, we're at an age and we're thinking, okay, so now what do I do? And who do I talk to? How do I find resources? How do I get prepared? How do I ease my mind and the mind of the people that care about me? I get prepared, and I make sure they know what I want. And it has given a great deal of comfort to both Richard and I that we have been able to do that. So hopefully you'll be able to review those resources, and I will send out a Zoom link in the next week so that you can join us to talk about the resources and discuss further things that you'd like to hear about. I'd like to welcome Jennifer from the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania to share with us about the United Way and their resources.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, let's see. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Awesome, thank you. Joe is a oh my God, I can't talk right now. I'm also a Virgo, and you're making me feel very disorganized right now, so I will be talking to you after this and getting all of your insight and resources. So as Joe said, my name is Jen. I'm the Director of Meeting Basic Needs at United Way. So my job day to day is really to make sure that agencies in Allegheny County have the resources they need to solve problems related to basic needs. So do you have food at home? Do you have stable housing? Are you worried about your utilities being shut off? And one of the newer sort of things that we consider as a basic need at United Way is actually internet access. So as you, kind of a thought exercise as I'm talking today, I want you to think about, what your average day looks like when you get up in the morning to when you're going to bed. Think about all of the technology that you're encountering, either willingly. So maybe you're downloading an e-book, you're hopping on Zoom to talk about how this event went in the next couple of weeks, or maybe you're trying to use the self-checkout at Giant Eagle, right? There's really no way at this point in our lives to kind of go day to day without encountering technology in some way. Sorry, my notes are on my phone. There we go. Speaking of technology, so as you're going through, also I want you to think about, what you're using technology for. It might be more professionally, it might be more personally, it might just be connecting with your chosen community, which seems very prevalent here. And I want you to think about, do you have the technology you need to make sure that you can do everything you want to be doing? So even if you don't have access to it right now, what is missing? What do you maybe need help with? And then sort of on the third prong of that, think about how confident you feel using those technologies. So if I gave you a laptop today and I said, here you go, do you know how to navigate? Do you know how to make it work for whatever you need it to do? Do you just feel confident and not worried, like if I press a button, is something going to happen? Typically not, unless you're smashing it on the podium, but please don't do that. So if you answered no to any of those questions, that's why I'm here today. So at United Way, we believe that everyone should have access to the technology, the skills, and the information to meaningfully participate in society. Think about, even just registering to vote. A lot of that, if you can't find an in-person voter registration, how can you actually participate in democracy? So it's really just an important component of how we interact with our daily lives. So United Way with 211, which I will talk about in a few minutes, we offer what we call our Digital Navigator Network. So the goal of this resource is to help the community get access to affordable internet, emphasis on affordable, free or low-cost devices, and also feel confident to safely navigate technology as you encounter whatever you need to do in your daily lives. So we do this, we have what we call a digital navigator. What does that mean? This is a trusted subject matter expert who knows the resources that are available relating to sort of internet access, devices, and digital skills training. So what happens when you work with a digital navigator, we're really looking at those three different areas. So the first thing we're gonna start with is, do you have affordable internet access at home? Right? Same. We're gonna ask you, where do you live? What are your needs? Are you trying to use Netflix on a couple of different computers or a TV? Are you just trying to read the news on your phone? Where do you live? So I live in Brookline, so I know that I have access to Comcast and Verizon. Not everybody has the luxury of being able to choose between two options. So it's our job to know sort of what's in your area, what are you eligible for if you're receiving other sorts of benefits. So if you're receiving SNAP, known as food stamps, Social Security, veterans pension, those types of questions, we're gonna kind of ask you, okay, what are you receiving? And there may be a program that's available for you. So if I have the option of Comcast, I know that Internet Essentials exist, it's $10 a month, or I can pay $30 a month for a little bit faster speed. If I have a student in K through 12 in my household, I know that I can get free internet for 5 years to help support them through their schooling. So those types of options. So it's our job to kind of know what's available and then more importantly, guide you through that process. I don't know if anybody's tried to call Comcast lately, but they're trying to, yeah, thank you. They're trying to sell you everything. So we want to make sure you have all of the information you need up front, you know what documentation is needed, so on and so forth. So that way you can make an informed decision to get that necessary resource, right? The other thing that we may do is actually participate in a conversation with your internet provider with you on the phone as well, right? This is especially important for some of our community members who maybe have an outstanding balance that they forgot about. So they want to get internet in their house again, but maybe they moved 5 years ago and didn't realize they had a final bill, right? So it's our job to kind of help navigate those conversations so you have the support and you're also not signing up for 5 different packages that you don't actually need and it's no longer affordable, right? So that's the first component. The second component is going to be device access. So think about a computer or a cell phone. So there are 2 options sort of in Allegheny County that we refer folks to. So if you need a no-cost computer at your home, one of those is Computer Reach. So I also do have resources that I can give a printout so you have everything at your fingertips. But Computer Reach offers a computer lottery system, meaning you fill out a form and you essentially win a free desktop computer. Now, the thing to know about this is that you're guaranteed to win. It's just a matter of timing. So you're not going to get it the next day, but maybe in the next couple of weeks, right? I will say it does require transportation access because you need to pick up the computer. They don't ship. But if that does fit your needs and you want a device at home, it's a great option. We're not going to pull up the Best Buy or Amazon and say, here's 5 different laptops all over $1,000. That's not our goal, and that's not something we consider affordable, right? And then the final thing that we want to make sure that we're connecting you with is digital skills training. So let's say I get you internet access, I get you a device. Well, we want you to feel comfortable knowing how to use it, right? That's the most important piece. So often we'll help clients enroll in training programs offered in their community. So we want to make sure we're finding a program that sort of fits your needs, what your interests are. Is it in person for 7 weeks? Do you need to do a one-on-one appointment? We also refer clients to their healthcare provider. So if you have UPMC, for instance, they have folks on their team who will help you navigate, like, here's how you look at your chart, here's how you use telehealth, those types of things. So think about, what your needs are, that those are options for you as well. So the overall goal is just to make sure that everybody in the community has access to those resources with somebody there to kind of walk them through it. So just to give you kind of an overview, this isn't necessarily important, but we do have 4 community providers that we work with. So we work with Goodwill, Literacy Pittsburgh, Vintage Senior Services out in East Liberty, and the YWCA of Westmoreland. So if you do use these services, you're not going to know who works for which organization, but I say that as sort of a way to, United Way has vetted all of these partners, right? They have an expertise, they've been providing these types of services for years, and they have that community trust. So we do want to make sure that our folks are trained, they're empathetic, they're knowledgeable, and they can help walk you through that process. So I told you all about what we do, and the most important part is how do you actually use this service? How do I get access to it? So has anybody here heard of 211? Yes. Few folks, yes, I love that. Okay, good. So PA 211 is a component of United Way, and this is what we call our helpline. So even if you walk away today and you don't remember anything I've said, I want you to remember 211. It operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you can call them over the phone, you can text them, you can get online and chat with somebody, what we call a resource navigator. And these are expert staff. They're trained, they're compassionate, and their job is to know the resources in the community. So even outside of, I'm here to talk about internet access, well, if you are looking for a food pantry in your neighborhood, you need a healthcare clinic or healthcare plan, you have a utility bill that, you're getting a shut-off notice and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. I can't have my electricity shut off. Can somebody help me pay for this? So that's the goal of 211, is to be available 24 hours a day to connect you to those resources. So as you call, where this connects to the Digital Navigator Network, you can either ask directly to talk with somebody, or they'll ask you 3 questions about, do you have internet access, so on and so forth, and then they'll connect you to a digital navigator. But the most important thing to remember is please call 211. Actually, I know AgeWell is definitely listed as one of our resources. I would probably just call them directly if you want to work with them. But 211 is an available resource for you as you're moving through and discovering what needs you have. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And our second presenter is Colin Adair Morgan. I don't know if I have this correct, elder law? Oh, okay. And he was referred by one of our members of our congregation, so welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. You can always tell when you're presenting in this type of setting because they always answer when you say good morning or good afternoon. My name is Colin, just like you said. I'm an elder law attorney with Julian Gray Associates, and thank you very much for inviting me today. It's a real pleasure to present to you, and it's nice to present my neighborhood. I live right on Beacon Hill Avenue, so this is an easy commute today. An elder law attorney, has anybody here worked with an elder law attorney before? Okay. So to explain what an elder law attorney does, an elder law attorney is very similar to an estate planning attorney, but an elder law attorney has a focus toward the things that tend to happen as we age, or considerations that come about over time. Mostly medical, but also long-term care, as well as financial, tax, and other matters. So I won't get too far into the weeds with those things, but I wanted to focus on 3 main topics. Fundamental estate planning documents, medical assistance, veterans benefits, and everything along there. Okay, so fundamental estate planning documents. There are major estate planning documents that everybody should have. Does everybody here have a will? Yes. Okay. Who here has a financial power of attorney? Okay. Does anybody here have a healthcare power of attorney? Well, this is a pretty good crowd. Does everybody here have a living will? Okay, well, we're good. No, kidding. So, just for the group here, because oftentimes we update these documents. My firm's biggest referral source is traditional estate planning attorneys. There's generally a handoff in forms and language and stuff like that. They can change with elder law. So we'll go over these fundamental estate planning documents, then talk about trust planning a little bit as well. So a last will and testament, this one's very easy. The last will and testament is the most widely used estate planning document in this country. It's basically a document where you tell people where you want your estate to go and who you want to make sure that it happens. Not very much nuance between traditional estate planning and elder law planning, except there are changes that we make to wills if an individual is looking at long-term care for themselves, for a partner, for a spouse, etc. Oftentimes there are some changes there. So we address those case by case. Financial power of attorney, though, is probably the most important document that I draft for my clients. A financial power of attorney is a document where you appoint an individual or other individuals to manage your finances in the event that you can't do so yourself. So traditional estate planning sets up a very specific type of financial power of attorney. Now, I teach a 3-hour course on these things, so I don't want to do that to you guys today. It's a nice day. I don't want to keep you in here with that. But the basics are for fundamental estate planning, we just want to make sure that we have somebody who can pick up the ball and run with it if an individual becomes incapacitated temporarily or permanently. Elder law adds some nuance. We add language for medical assistance. We add language for Veterans Affairs benefits. We confer a lot more power onto our agents through elder law financial powers of attorney, because oftentimes an entire estate needs to be moved into a trust or to another individual with, respect to long-term care planning. Okay, so some nuances, and I always, do free reviews of people's documents to make sure, that they have exactly what they need. Lastly, to address the healthcare power of attorney and living will, and I combined these documents into one. I find that the less documents a client has, the less likely they are to lose something. So I try to bundle as much as I can together. You want a healthcare power of attorney that also addresses long-term care. Traditional estate planning, healthcare powers of attorneys don't always have that language. You want a living will attached, because as we age and as diagnoses come about, our opinions on healthcare, especially end-of-life care, can frequently change. And you want to make sure that you have the right agents, appointed. A lot of my updating of these documents happens very simply. Normally, people get these documents very young, when they get married or they have their first children, okay? And they often appoint each other, and that's wonderful. That makes a lot of sense. But when I have an 86-year-old client appointing an 84-year-old client as an agent, that poses some question marks. Hey, what if both individuals get sick around the same time? So we always want to bring in other people if we can. And, oftentimes we bring in children, grandchildren, et cetera. But if that isn't available, we also have professionals that we work with who are happy to serve, as agents and fiduciaries for our clients. Living will, just to nod to that briefly, a living will is an extremely important and very personal document that everybody should have. When I say everybody, our youngest clients who have these documents are 18, because that's the youngest you can be to sign them, and our oldest client with these is 105 years old. So if you're between the ages of 18 and 105, you should probably have these documents, okay? So your living will, you want to make sure that you update that frequently. If you have a diagnosis that you're concerned about, if you have a change in health status, it's a good time to look at these documents. People often ask me, when should I review my estate plan? And you should bring it into my office to review when big life changes happen. When you get married, if you have children, if you have grandchildren, if you retire, if you have a significant and meaningful change in your health status or a diagnosis. These are all good times to come in and review. What I should also nod to, along with the healthcare power of attorney, does anybody in here have a pulsed document? Oh, gold star. All right, you're the top. Pennsylvania Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment, or pulsed document, is a distilled version of a living will that's signed by a doctor, or I believe a nurse practitioner can do so. I'll defer to our medical professionals for that. And it's an easy one-pager document. It's normally, in a very bright colored piece of cardstock that goes into a person's medical file. It's a great thing to have if you're living in a retirement community, nursing home setting where you have significant care, because it has all of your wishes with respect to health care, very easy to find. So if something happens and you're in a crisis, we don't have an emergency room paging through your healthcare power of attorney and your living will to find out what you need. It's easy to review. Great thing to have. If you have all of those documents, you have one estate planning, and you do not need me. But if you don't, I'd be happy to talk to you about them. And I have information. I put together pamphlets for everybody, and I also brought in chapsticks for everybody too. So it's really hot today, but we're kind of in that turning of the seasons. I always find that chapstick becomes pretty useful around that. Everybody loves the chapsticks, absolutely. Next up, and I'll nod to these two briefly because I'm going on a little bit. Medical assistance. Has anybody here ever helped a loved one apply for Medicaid? Okay, so you know the process. So to explain what Medicaid is. Medicaid or medical assistance, synonymous terms, is a government benefits program that's jointly administered by the federal and state governments that pays for long-term care. There's a lot more to it, but for our purposes today, that's what I'd like to focus on for us. So long-term care medical assistance is an extremely powerful and important benefits program for individuals who are looking at long-term care or experiencing the need for long-term care. I say this because, does anybody have any idea what the price range for a month in a nursing home is? Okay, sometimes, and doing wonderful then, because sometimes it's up to 15. So it's an untenably large number for most folks. Most people can't run that. Well, nobody can run that with income, and most people can't run that with assets, okay? 15,000 per month. That's the top that I've seen, and I've normally seen somewhere between 10 to 12 to 15, somewhere around there. It depends on what your needs are, private room, things like that. There are a lot of considerations. But Medicaid will cover all of that, aside from your income. You partner with the state for it. Again, I teach another 3-hour course on this, so I won't do that to you guys today. But the important takeaway is if you can apply successfully for medical assistance, it can be a great help to maintain you in a nursing home. Big caveat, it is a means-tested benefits program. Very strictly means-tested. Most folks can only keep around $8,000 in assets and successfully apply for Medicaid. And oftentimes, if you speak to individuals from the Department of Human Services or a lot of nursing homes, they'll tell you to just spend in the nursing home over time, and eventually that will whittle the money down to the point where you can successfully apply for Medicaid. If I presented that to you as my solution, I would expect to never get a client ever again, and we'd find other employment. We have a lot of other solutions. Planning via trusts, we do Medicaid compliant trusts, which I can talk about maybe in a different session, or happy to speak to anybody about those here. We do strategic gifting, lots of different solutions. It's never too late, never too early to plan for medical assistance. Okay, so that's a brief overview on a very complicated and big benefits program. Lastly, I'd like to talk about Veterans Affairs benefits. Is anybody here a veteran or the spouse of a veteran, child of, okay, and thank you very much. And so veterans benefits is something that we refer to as the hidden benefit. A lot of people don't or are not aware of the Veterans Affairs Aid and Attendance Benefits Program. So just briefly, because we're in Western PA and we have such a big tradition of service in this area, I think that this knowledge is just useful for everybody in case you run into somebody who might need it. The Veterans Affairs, Department of Veterans Affairs pays up to $2,700 per month through their Aid and Attendance Benefits Program. It's a tax-free benefit that goes to veterans, veteran spouses, veteran-dependent children, or surviving spouses of veterans, okay? If you need medical care, so, significant daily medical care, and you're under about $150,000 in net worth, you can successfully apply for Aid and Attendance benefits. So really, really powerful benefit. $2,700 per month for an individual who's on a fixed income is a massive, massive benefit. So I try to get that message out. Just like with medical assistance, there are a lot of planning techniques that you can employ to expedite getting on that benefits program. So I always try to get the word out there. So I'm a little bit under 15 minutes, so I will step away from the mic here and happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
We will be doing questions and answers after the fourth speaker. Thank you. Thank you. We now have Sylvia McCafferty, and Sylvia is from the Area Agency on Aging in Allegheny County, and Sylvia is over the Caregiver program at the Area Agency on Aging. Welcome.
Lower that a little bit. There we go. Can you hear me? Okay. Well, thank you and good afternoon. As Joe said, my name's Sylvia, and I am the coordinator of the Family Caregiver Support Program in Allegheny County. It has a couple components, and I'll touch on them. The Caregiver Support Program is a reimbursement program for caregivers. It is to support the caregivers who are paying for things out of their pocket for services and supports for a care receiver. And a caregiver, care receiver, anybody out here do caregiving? Okay. It could be anybody. It could be a family member. It could be a child. It could be a neighbor. There are a lot of caregivers out there. Our program currently has 400 people receiving reimbursement on a monthly basis. The program has multiple components. It supports caregivers of individuals 60 and older, but it also has a part where it supports caregivers of individuals with Alzheimer's related or related disorder. And that care receiver can be any age. Some examples of what we typically reimburse for those instances is possibly incontinence supplies, personal care, up to 2 over-the-counter medications a month, respite for the caregiver. And so in the case, if you look at personal care, so we have a lot of examples where maybe a granddaughter is taking care of her grandfather, and she's not comfortable, nor is he, with her bathing. So she hires somebody who becomes an independent contractor, and they come in and they bathe, take care of that, or other personal needs, and they sign a timesheet. And it says, from when they worked, what the hourly wage is, and what the total is. And they return that receipt into us, or that timesheet, and we then send the check to the caregiver, who also had paid for that service out of their pocket first. So again, it's reimbursement. Another component to the program is the grandparent or older relative of children under the age of 18. And we have, of the 400 people in our program, about 41 fall into that category. And it normally is, unfortunately, during this opioid pandemic, you have parents who are using, they either wind up in prison or unfortunately they pass away. And so the grandchildren are out there being raised by the grandparents or a grandfamily. In that case, there's a lot of stress in those situations, but it does happen. Some examples of what we would reimburse for that program are seasonal clothing, because the children are growing. Every season they may need some outfits. We pay for camps, extracurricular activities, school supplies. This time of year is very big. So the program, again, it's reimbursing, and it benefits the caregiver. So it allows them to receive reimbursement for things that they're paying for out of their pocket. We have one case, this grandparent's taking care of 5 grandchildren from the ages of 2 to 10. I just can't imagine how she does it, but she does. So the reimbursements are based on the care receiver's household. And that's really important, because if you are, I gave care to my mother for 15 years, and I worked at Verizon, and I did pretty good. And I would have felt guilty going to a program like that, but in reality, she would have probably preferred that because she didn't want to put a burden on me. So it's based on the care receiver's household income. And there's a sliding scale, and I do have a piece of that with me if anybody has a question later. You may wind up with a copay depending on what that income limit is. Where am I? Okay. The only component that requires that the caregiver and care receiver live in the same house as the grandparents. So the way the process starts is a call's made to our senior line, which I left cards out there with their number. And what they'll do is refer you or you'll be given a care manager from one of our care management agencies, which is Lifespan, Wesley, and Family Links. That person will come out and do what's called a CAT, which is a caregiver assessment tool. And this tool looks at the needs of the care receiver, it looks at the involvement of the caregiver, but it also takes into consideration the well-being of the caregiver, because it is about the caregiver in this situation. So after you get it into the program, the caregiver, as they purchase things that are eligible within the program, they'll save their receipts. If they have someone coming in and providing supports, they save those timesheets. And once a month, before the 5th of the month, they send those to their care manager. And the care manager puts them into the system, and, excuse me, reimbursement is made usually around the 15th of the month onto a debit card. And that caregiver can use that debit card for whatever they want, because it's their money that they're being reimbursed back for. So the care plan for both of these programs can go up to $600 per month, depending on the needs. So when the care manager goes out and talks with you in your situation, they'll ask questions like, what are you spending money on today? What kind of services and supports are you coming in? What is it costing you? Some of them are $200, but a lot of them go up to $600 because it's expensive. And there's another component to the program, and that is for a one-time home modification. So the amount of that reimbursement is up to $5,000 per life. Some of those instances, so you can use it all at once, or you can use it in increments, but it's a $5,000 cap per lifetime. Some of the things that we see in that program are stair glides to get a person, the care receiver, from the downstairs to the upstairs, where usually the bedrooms and bathrooms are. They might need grab bars in the tub. They might need doors widened because they're now in a wheelchair and the wheelchair can't get into the bathroom, so it's obstructing that. They may need a ramp. They may need a walk-in shower as opposed to the tub. So all of those things are eligible. You have to get pre-approval for them first, but the care manager will send a form and it comes to me, and we review it and make sure it fits all of the requirements, but it's a very popular program. The last thing I wanted to mention to you is local libraries. We have backpacks at most local libraries. I would ask you to call first because one of them did walk away and never come back. But they have a lot of interesting information in them, and they have movies and books. And you can go to the library, get the backpack, bring it back, and you can even keep it here, Joe, for a while if you want. But there's a movie in there that I wanted to discuss, and it's a movie called Still Alice. Have you ever heard of that? That's have you all? That's in that backpack. And if you think about her story, which is a true story, she was a renowned linguist professor. Words were her world. And when she started to forget her words, that really, I found that to be very impactful in a good movie. But Joe, that is pretty much what I have. And like I said, I have some additional information if you have questions later. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. I just want to say my family, with my father and my stepmother, we use the Aging Senior Line often and found it to be a great resource, and we also used 211. And it was kind of comforting to have experts you could talk to, reflect with, and then pass you on to agencies and resources, and we ended up using Lifespan. So it's good information. Our last speaker is Hayley Maher, and Hayley is from the Jewish Community Center in the South Hills, and she is a part of the Age Well program there. Thanks.
But we're all aging.
Yes, from birth.
Yes.
I always
Thank-
have to.
Good. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm grateful that Joe has shared his personal story because exactly like he said, when you reach a point where you find yourself suddenly needing more resources and you have questions that you've never had to answer before, that's a very hard and confusing time. And that is exactly why Age Well Pittsburgh was established. We've been around since 2004, and Age Well Pittsburgh is a strategic alliance between the Jewish Community Center, where I work, the Jewish Association on Aging, and Jewish Family and Community Services. So between those three organizations, our goal is really to provide, first of all, to be a hub of resources. So if you need something but you're not sure exactly where to get it, similar to the senior line in 211, we have a phone number that you can call for information and referral. But then also to provide a kind of a continuum of care. So JAA has residential care, memory care, community services, and rehabilitation services. So they're very much focused on the healthcare sector. JFCS provides care management, counseling, home assessments, career services, and then they also do a lot with refugee and migrant services. So they're more focused on kind of community care. And then Age Well at the JCC, we focus really heavily on social care, social services, building community, making sure that you have people when you need to be around people. So I think we all can agree that social isolation is an issue that pretty heavily affects older adults, especially in this post-COVID world that we are living in. Among folks who have registered with us at Age Well at the JCC, about 40% of our members live alone, which is pretty significant. If you live by yourself, you probably eat most of your meals by yourself. You spend a lot of time isolated from other people. So our services are really focused on providing that social opportunity for you to come and be in community with people. Whether you're 18 or 80, all of us are meant to be in community and around other people. And like I said, we're all aging, so we all need people, we all need support. So Age Well at the JCC is our senior center at the JCC. We do have a location in both Squirrel Hill and South Hills, so I'm the director at our South Hills location. We were so excited about a year and a half ago to expand our services to the South Hills. And I know many of you have already been in to see us, so it's nice to see some friendly faces. You all who are already members can speak to the experience. But we provide a variety of services. So just to give a couple examples, related to health and wellness, we do have blood pressure screenings a couple times a month. We have some vaccination clinics coming up. We have a volunteer who does counseling hours for us. And one of our largest programs is our congregate meal program. So you can come in 5 days a week. We serve lunch. It's a great opportunity to come in and be in community with other people. One of my favorite parts of my job is when people who don't know each other come into the lunchroom and sit down and start chatting, and then a new friendship is made, and then you continue to come back and have lunch with us every day. As far as education, we often have guest speakers. We have things related to estate planning, like Colin mentioned. We have had doctors come in and talk about different things related to health and aging or nutrition or a variety of different topics. Things like Social Security, really a variety. Those of you who have been in, you know that I'm always open to new ideas. So we're really focused on what our members want to learn more about, and then we can facilitate those resources. And then the third piece that I wanted to talk about was social options that we have. So we have a lot of groups that come in to play games. We have a card group and a mahjong group that are both pretty popular. We have a variety of social clubs and discussion groups related to different hobbies and interests, like a garden club and a theater club. And then one piece that makes our program really special and unique is that there is also a preschool at the JCC, so we're very well poised for intergenerational programming. So we have some folks who go in and read books with the kids. We have a new program coming up where it will be a monthly, come in and do an activity with the preschoolers. And even if you're just in the building, it's nice to see the kids coming and going and making those connections with the kids. So that's really our role. We also do a lot of information and referrals. So if you come to our office looking for a service that we don't directly offer, we may refer you to 211 or the senior line or other specific resources in the community. So the good thing about the Aging Network is that even though it is confusing to find yourself in a place where you need more resources, we all work very closely together so we can make sure that you get the services that you need, no matter where they're at. And that's a brief overview of Age Well, so I think the next part is questions. I'll be happy to answer any specific questions.
Thank you. Thanks to all of our presenters. Really a rich array of services. I have to say, over the past 50 years, I've lived in 3 different states, and Pennsylvania, and especially Allegheny County, is rich in aging resources and services. I can't tell you the difference, and it always shocked me when living in Florida. Florida is not rich in aging resources at all compared to Pennsylvania. I mean, just think Allegheny County has 40+ senior centers that are funded publicly. And the county that we lived in outside of Orlando had 1. And I just can't say enough for the fact that besides these 4 that represent wonderful resources and agencies, there's just so much out there. And I see these 4 agencies as a doorway to making our lives smarter and safer. So thank you for being here, definitely. We have time for questions and answers. I am going to, we can share this, pass that to people, and I will go around if you have a question or a comment. Oh, works okay. I will bring the mic to you so we can hear. Any questions, comments? Leslie, there you go.
I have a question. I'm not financially well off, and I need services. Is there a way to obtain services to understand the aging process and the maybe housing for older aging Americans that don't have the financial well-being to go someplace that's considered nice or whatever? Also, I have a cat, so.
We have to remember our animals. Anyone want to go with that?
Just to address one thing with respect to long-term care housing, 99.9% of nursing homes in this region are Medicaid compliant. So, yeah, and so in the event that you need long-term care, most of them are in some really great places too, so.
And I would just also say that the senior line, which is really the front door, we call them the front door to aging, they can also support or provide you with some information. The books that the Senior Resource Guide, it lists so many different places.
That's in your packet there.
But it sounds, you've really, a call to the senior line requesting an assessment for services is a great way just to get in, and then they can help direct you to where you may need to go. I have the cards out there.
And it's in the Senior Resource Guide also.
Okay.
It's that substantial booklet that each one of you have.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think it's
Yeah.
4235, but I did bring the cards.
Yeah. And Leslie, we're in the region for the Lifespan Agency is in this area, I believe, for assessments.
Could be. Well, we would do the initial assessment through our assessment unit, and then you would be assigned a care manager based on that, and they can help with a lot of things. Very resourceful.
Yeah, it's well worth it, Leslie. I saw another hand over here. Yes.
Can you hear me? Hello? Good, better? Okay. From time to time, I have needed to get resources on behalf of my mother. Now, I am the sibling that does not have power of attorney. That belongs to a different sibling, so I've had some trouble. So specifically to the 211 lady, Jen, Do I need power of attorney in order to get her internet access and this computer?
For the computer, no. You can honestly fill out the form on behalf of anybody, and then you would just need to arrange with Computer Reach as far as who's going to do the pickup. They're very, I know the team there, they're very flexible. With the internet access, you really have to depend on the company. Depends on what's in the area. Some resources, you're going to need proof of income, proof of benefits, that type of thing. I know some of our digital navigators have gotten consent on behalf of clients to help fill out those applications, but they obviously don't have power of attorney attached to that. So as long as, I would say, if you're able to be with the individual, you can apply together and you can be the one doing all of the legwork, so to speak. Yep.
Other questions?
My wife and I have been looking at retirement homes. It's an interesting experience. In many ways, I've been impressed with what I've seen. But what I find most difficult to comprehend is the financial structures in terms of the level at which you enter and you purchase, and you get a certain percentage back, or you don't get a certain percentage back. It's very, very confusing. Is there anyone who specializes in making judgments about the financial arrangements that are attached to the process? You.
Yeah, I review CCRC contracts all the time. Yeah, happy to. A lot of it's kind of take it or leave it, but there's some wiggle room, and definitely the easiest one that everybody should know about is when you're entering any type of retirement or care community. If there's an arbitration clause in your contract, I try to tell as many people as I can about this. Refuse to sign that and have them knock it out. It's really important. But other than that, I'm happy to look at any contracts that my clients have. But no arbitration clauses. Don't let them do it to you.
I'm curious about the age well. I'm a member of JCC, and my sense is that you have to be a member of JCC to use Age Well.
No, you don't have to be a JCC member to be an AgeWell member. AgeWell is open to anyone over the age of 60.
Okay, well, at South Hills JCC, they have the lunch 3 days a week?
Newly 5 days a week, yeah.
Okay, and, pardon?
Newly 5 days a
Oh,
week.
it is, okay.
Yeah.
And I tried to get one, I'm a member and my husband's not, and I tried to get 2 meals, one for each of us, and they said, well, you can only get the one that belongs to JCC, which is me. So I'm just curious if...
So you would both have to be registered as AgeWell members. That may be what the issue was.
But he could register as an AgeWell member and not be a member of JCC.
Absolutely.
Oh, and still use all the benefits. Yeah.
So you wouldn't have access to all of the fitness facilities, but all AgeWell programs are open to
Okay,
anyone
thank
over the
you.
age of 60. And we can talk more about that if you give me a call.
It's an incredible program, so thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sylvia, I have a question, if you could elaborate a little bit on the independent contractors you use for respite. What kind of screening processes, bonding, whatever, do you do for those people?
We actually, it's the caregiver who selects that person.
From where?
It could be their neighbor. It just can't be a family member, but it could be their neighbor, it could be a friend that they know, it could be from an agency. We do have some folks who use agencies. So as long as that caregiver's paying that person or that agency for that service, they will get reimbursed back.
Is the reimbursement business based on financial need for such a thing?
All of this, it's the care receiver's household income that decides the reimbursement amount. And there's a sliding scale based on that. And it has nothing to do with the caregiver's income. That caregiver could be a millionaire. It's the care receiver and their household income.
Thank you for clarifying that.
You're welcome.
Also in the packet, there's a 4-page document that lists agencies throughout the South Hills that provide a full range of in-home care. And I know I interviewed 3 of them about 2 years ago and had my questions answered. They were insured, they were bonded, they were supervised. It's a good question, but you'll see a document in there. It actually was created, the document, by the social worker at St. Clair Hospital, and she updates it on a regular basis.
I would just like to ask the fellow from Julian Gray. I've used your law firm. I think they're awesome also. I'll just tell people. My interest was, I have a stepdaughter who works full-time but will probably always be eligible for Medicaid because she has 2 disabled children and a 3rd child in her house. She is a widow. And my husband and I are concerned that whatever modest remains we may have to give her when we go will knock either her or the children off of Medicaid, which would be a total disaster. And I would feel like every little scrape together we have done in our lives would end up being eaten up by the healthcare system, which is not fair. Yeah, I know there's such a thing as special needs trust, but I guess my question is, do you have to have a lot before that's an issue? Is that an expensive proposition, et cetera?
It's a great question, and thank you for the compliment right off the bat. Appreciate that. So there's a great solution to that situation, and it's actually called a supplemental needs trust, not a special needs trust. A special needs trust is funded by an individual with disabilities who has more money than they should to qualify for benefits. A supplemental needs trust is funded by a third party, a parent, a family member, whoever, for the benefit of an individual who has disabilities who may be on benefits. So in other words, if I'm on Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security, and my parents want to leave me an inheritance but not have that inheritance knock me off of all my benefits, they would fund a trust for me. So in other words, all of my inheritance would go into that trust as opposed to directly to me. And we'd figure out who would be trustee, things like that. Very easily done. As far as expense is concerned, without quoting any numbers or anything, I can tell you that my goal is accessibility, is figuring something out. So, you know, there's normally kind of a number, which is what it takes to do one of these plans. But if we need, you know, whatever we need to do to make it work, we'll make it work. Okay.
Good, thanks. Yeah.
Colin, we have some groups here, and we often talk about this issue, and I'm wondering if you have any general guidance, because you've probably worked with a lot of families. Whether you have children, multiple children, no children, when you're making decisions about your healthcare proxy, about management of, you know, power of attorney, all this, any general guidance between going the professional route of having somebody who's kind of managing that, how you would choose a person within your family or within the community? Just, we never come to any determination about what's a smart thing to do.
Well, and that's because it's different for every single family. It really is. And the solution to that is a lot of conversations, a lot of work with your attorney who's drafting the documents. A lot of people, so the form is very boilerplate, right? It's statutory. Every power of attorney our office drafts looks exactly the same. But the work comes about in figuring out who we're appointing. And so the default setting for these in most of my clients' minds is, well, I'll appoint my spouse and then children in age order. That's 9 out of 10 people come in with that. 2 out of 10 actually end up doing that. You know, it never works out that way. So you want to pick who's best for the job, and the person who's best for the job takes into account a number of factors. A person needs to be decisive. A person needs to be deferential to the individual who appointed them, not, in other words, not inserting their own opinions on it. And they need to have the time capabilities to do what's not always an easy job. So, those are some of the factors. I mean, it's an interview process. I always ask, well, who do you think? And oftentimes people have pretty clear mind, and they'll explain, then no further questions. But if they're not sure, I'll interview a client as long as it takes. It's funny. I think if I asked everybody to raise their hands here, everybody would agree that they don't want to pay more taxes than they have to. Everybody would agree that they don't want to pay more for long-term care than they have to. But everybody would have their own very specific opinion with how they want their end-of-life care to be managed. So while it's the document that carries the least weight as far as like legalities and financial stuff goes, it's the most personal document you're ever going to sign. So I just gave a total lawyer answer. It was a simple question. It should have been 2 sentences answer, and I just went on and on and on. It's about taking the time and having the conversations to pick the right folks.
Other questions or comments? Yeah, there we go.
Whenever something is dependent on household income, are you talking about total or AGI or what?
Total household income.
Okay, so that if a good deal of that is Social Security, et cetera, there's no distinction as to the source.
Right. I mean, and then we've reduced the amount of Medicare or Medicaid that comes out of that money. And then it's a total, and then based on the number, I mean, there's a whole chart of where it goes to, but it's pretty good number. I mean, I think. Total household income. Sure.
I have a question for the attorney. I have, because I worked as a secretary at Pitt for numerous years, I have a life insurance policy through the Hartford. And do I have to put that in my will, or will they just contact my daughter automatically?
So the answer is no to both.
Okay.
So you don't have to put it in your will because it's beneficiary designated. But they're not going to reach out to your daughter. It's the opposite.
She should reach out to them?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's good. It's always good to have that conversation. Go, hey, I have a life insurance policy with this carrier. Just give them a call if something happens.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, certainly.
And also that workbook covers those kinds of information and documents to put in there. Yeah.
I was just going to say something on the heels of that conversation about like who gets to be your decision maker and how to choose that person. Can you not hear? Okay, I will get it closer to my face. So I'm a physician, and one of the things that I find kind of frustrating, but I get it, nobody ever wants to talk about aging. As you said, it's like the one thing that we're surprised about, or maybe that was Colin who said it, I can't remember, but I think it's important for anyone, let's say over 70, 75, certainly as you're getting to the age of 80, to have those conversations with your family. Almost all of your primary care physicians will have POLSTS forms that Colin mentioned that they will fill out with you that has to be completed with a medical provider. And they'll usually also carry a booklet called the 5 Wishes. That I think is a really important booklet to go through with your family members, because I will be frank with you, you can put all the work into a living will, and they're just gonna, when you're in the hospital, they're just gonna ask your family what they want them to do. And if you've never, you could do all this work, put it into this legal document, and nobody ever looks at it in the hospital, they just talk to your family. And if your family doesn't know what you want, they're going to live with some stress, regret, discomfort at making those decisions, and it's really unfair to your family to not prepare them to know what you would want. And everyone's different. Some people want to try everything and get everything they can out of life, and other people are like, no, I don't want to have these things done to me, and whatever your belief is completely, your belief to have. But if your family doesn't understand that, they may live with guilt at not having been as aggressive as they thought maybe they should, or withdrawing care. So I just encourage people to think about that. And even though it's not a conversation that it's almost like having the, sex talk with teenagers. It's like having the death talk with parents and children. It's really difficult to do that. But I would encourage people to do that. You can also order those POLST forms or There's a great PA Pulsed video online you can watch. I think it was made in the 80s. It's very old-fashioned. And you can order them online, as well as the 5 Wishes document. Also have to make a plug for long-term care insurance, because here's my mom, who is not wealthy, living in a beautiful place for $8,000 a month and doesn't pay a dime. But I think you have to get that before the age of 50, 55 or something. So long-term care insurance, it's very expensive, but yeah, 1980s. Thank you, long-term care
Good
insurance.
work. Smart work. Yep.
Thank you.
And if I could just piggyback really quick, there's a great book, and I'm going to butcher the name, but I think it's called something to the effect of, "Can we please talk about something more pleasant?" And it's a graphic novel about that type of conversation. So easy read, really great.
I'm looking at this in case of emergency workbook, and it asks for some fairly specific, intimate details, like bank account numbers, credit card numbers, that sort of thing. After I put that stuff in here, where am I going to put this so I can be sure that some thief is not going to get a hold of it?
In a safe, just in your house.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually put all of our documents that could have compromising information into a safe. And it was very inexpensive. It was on Amazon.
And you have to give the combination of the safe to somebody in case something. I heard somebody say long-term care insurance, and does that even make sense? Because a lot of these senior facilities, if you have long-term care insurance, it's a cheaper monthly rate than it is if you don't have long-term care insurance. So I'm curious about long-term care insurance. When I looked into it 20 years ago, everybody said these companies are going bankrupt, nobody's doing anything, it's a waste of time. So I'm curious.
Sorry, you guys are stuck with the lawyer a lot today. Long-term care insurance policies are like snowflakes. Everyone is different. Different companies have different products. When you got yours in the absolute sweet spot to get them. Right? No, I wish. Although I probably wouldn't exist if they did. So there are Lincoln developed a product called the Money Guard plan, which is where you take a larger lump sum and you purchase a long-term care, or you purchase long-term care coverage. What comes along with that is a death benefit. So it's a hybrid product between life insurance and long-term care. Everybody else retrofitted it, figured it out, and the other big carriers have it. The big analysis with long-term care insurance is, am I ever, or are my loved ones ever going to get value out of this? Because anything's worth the cost if you get value back out of it. So what's great about these hybrid products is they attach death benefits. So if you're like my grandmother and go to bed one night and pass away in your sleep, well, you never needed long-term care, so then a death benefit goes to your loved ones. So for example, if you put $100,000 in one of these policies, a lot of people fund these after they sell their home if they're downsizing. So you have some liquidity to work with. You put $100,000 in the policy, you get like $300,000 of long-term care coverage, but you also get like $120,000 of death benefit. So the death benefit doesn't pop like a traditional life insurance policy, but you get something back, out of it. So here you go. So sometimes it's worth it.
Other questions or comments? Leslie?
I just have Medicare normal. Do I need to get long-term care insurance too? No. Okay, thank you.
That was one of the easier answers.
For anybody that doesn't know, at this church, the third Wednesday of each month, we have a book group called the Home Stretch. We used to call it the Death and Dying Group, but people were turned off by it. But we read books. We read books specifically written by people who have gone through the dying process. Some practical information, other stories of how families have worked together. Or not, yes. And all the options there are for making decisions around what you want for your final decision.
That leads me to talk about something at JCC. There was a class that several of us, some of us in the same room here, took a bereavement class. And he was a psychologist, and that in itself, there's a lot you can get by going to the JCC with this aging well, why something.
Okay, well, I want to again thank our presenters, a really incredible resource for us. Appreciate it. Yes. I also would, I don't need two of these. I also want to thank Terry in the back there, who was my co-partner in this. Thank you, Terry, very much. Okay, as a follow-up, we will send out a Zoom link to attendees. Say in about 2 weeks, we will meet by Zoom in an evening and talk about the materials that you have there, questions you might have, further comments. At the same time, we're going to try to send out a questionnaire, get your feedback about this workshop, your ideas, the benefits of it, things that could be different or changed. We very much want to be open to what you saw as beneficial for this kind of a gathering, since I think it's probably the first we've had of this particular approach, which is a smart aging approach is what we're calling it. Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.